It's always so funny because I know exactly why they want a black bean burrito. For our listeners out there, if you don't know what we're talking about, go watch Game Changers.
Yeah, exactly. If Arnold can do it, they can do it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. But that it is great. But I think also like you are in such a powerful position, you know, and that's also another thing. Like you are very multi-skilled. You know, you're also a movie maker, you're a film director, and you're a yoga teacher. You're a chef. Do you feel like, because that's something that I sometimes think about a lot. It's like, you know, do you have a preference for any of them, or do you try to do it all, or like how is that for you to sort of balance all these things you do out?
Yeah, well, I definitely think all of these different experiences that I've gone through in my life doing these different careers have led me to the point where I'm at now, and that continues to happen as I move forward, and even in my chefing career. But I remember very clearly reading one of David Life's CVs, quite a few years ago. Do you know the one I'm speaking about?
Yeah, I think I know what you're going to say.
Where he basically just says he's been a barman, he's been a bouncer, he's been a wrestler, he's been a dishwasher, all of these things, right? And it really did inspire me reading that, because at the time in my life, I had already started making the film What Is Real, and I was on the path of yoga and, you know, teaching yoga. And I thought, maybe I'm just taking on too much in this life. Maybe I should just focus on one thing. And then I read that and I thought, well, you know, if David has gone through this life and he's happy, then surely there's something in that. And I definitely do take a lot out of what I've learned in the past from my filmmaking. I still try and use it in the cafe when we make videos. I haven't made many videos lately because we've been so busy cooking and, you know, keeping people happy with food. But that's actually on the horizon. Since COVID happened, I realized more and more people need this interaction on YouTube, in these various channels, Instagram, to not just feel okay, but also be connected with someone else across the world, just like what you're doing now with your podcast, you know. Who knows what we say between ourselves right now that's going to inspire someone else to do great things. And
absolutely, yeah.
All of those things, I just use them as tools in my everyday, you know, support system. Yoga is never going to go away. I don't teach physical yoga classes anymore since I don't have my yoga studio, but I practice every day. I'm on the mat even if I only do the magic 10, you know, or even if I just do 20 breaths of down dog, or if I just meditate. I always will have all of these things with me every day. The mindfulness in the kitchen. There's times when you get a customer that's very difficult, and you actually just want to tell them, hey man, there's the door.
Hey man, black burrito to your face. Black burrito to your face, motherfucker.
So some days you just want to tell someone to, you know, get out of here. And
but you are always all those things, of course. You know, that's the thing as well. Like, I mean, when I, like you, had my own cafe, of course, I think that for 80 or 90%, I was just cooking, you know, like, and I was still teaching yoga, but a lot of things also kind of go to the back burner because you are just focused on the one thing, but you are always everything. Like you always are all those things. And that's how Sharon calls it, a holy being, like with WH, you know, like you're holy whole, you know, like you, and that's also so beautiful. But I think what you're saying as well is it's really beautiful that you can, I think you're reaching an audience, you reach an audience with your movie, you're reaching an audience with your cafe, you're reaching an audience with yoga, and so in a way you're actually, you know, even reaching more people because you have more hats that you're wearing, you know. So in that sense, I think it's an amazing thing to be doing a lot of different things, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely do know that in the next few years I will be making a documentary, and it will be focused more on what I'm doing now, the food aspect, whereas before it was the yoga journey. And I'm still on my yoga journey. My now it's the food part of that, and how that connects with people. And I'm not sure what that's going to look like at all right now, but I know it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's really nice because speaking of which, like, you made this documentary, What Is Real? Is it now 3 years ago or?
Well, we started filming 2015.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it came out at the end of 2016. Yeah, so it's
Okay.
4 years.
Wow. 4 years ago now. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Time
yeah,
is time's
time
flying.
flies. I think the first time I spoke to Sharon and David about it was somewhere in 2014, maybe early 2015. It took a while to get it going because we had crowdfunding and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And can people still buy it? Can people still see it?
Yeah, it's on Gaia TV.
Gaia TV. Okay.
Yeah, you can view it there. I've been wanting to get it onto Netflix for some time now, but it just hasn't happened from royalties point of view, and just the cost to get it to Netflix.
Well, we'll make sure I'll make sure I'll grab that link of you and I'll put it here in the notes, because I mean, this was my first introduction to you, really. Of course, I heard your name here and there, and I actually I still have the T-shirt of What Is Real. And I really loved it. I think it was a very wonderful documentary. There was such a beautiful line of your journey and then the actual journey of Jivamukti Yoga, and how you kind of blended it all together was, I think, really well done. And I'd love to see more of you, and especially your food journey. Kind of thing. It would be so. Yeah, it's really it'd be really nice to see what's up next for you.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We've got the first plant-based show coming up here in Cape Town in November, and because of COVID-19, it's now going to be a virtual show. The physical one will happen next May. And, it must be so funny, like, for you to listen to this, because in Europe, you probably had so many vegan expos and conventions.
Yeah, I mean, but
this is the first one happening in Africa. Only
so
now,
good, so good, though.
It's great.
So good.
So I'll be sharing the virtual stage with Gaz Oakley in November, which is so cool. And, he's another great inspiration to both you and I as chefs. He's come from a traditional background of food making, so that's going to be great to connect with someone like that. And even connecting with Sharon when I went and filmed her in Woodstock, her and David, just her process of how she goes about cooking every day is so interesting. So you never stop learning, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
No, absolutely. And using it in all different ways, because for me, I think people see too much separation anyway. Like they just go, so you're a yoga teacher and you're a chef and you have your podcast and you do all this stuff. And it's like, it's so funny how people see everything so extremely separate, when really for me, I'm like, food, yoga, and activism is what I do. Of course it makes sense. Like, I'm an animal rights activist, and therefore, I also really enjoy cooking. And I know many people who are vegan who really enjoy cooking because they just love it and they have a good relationship with food. And then, yoga for me is also all part of that. Yoga is so much more than exercising on the mat, as you and I both know, like it's a way of living. So, it's really interesting to see, how we can just all be one, in that,
Absolutely. I mean, what's also interesting is to see how there's so many global leaders of veganism starting to come together, the different brands that are starting to pop up. And how it's becoming so much more accessible. We'll be able to get similar stuff here as to what you guys get in Europe. It's whereas before it was just really tofu.
Yeah, totally.
Or a bean burger, And now it's amazing how quickly it's escalating.
Yeah.
The good and the bads of capitalism that we've spoken about before, you and I. It has its place. I'm not saying it's bad at all, but it's just interesting how even the food now is connected in a brand almost.
Yeah.
Like a Beyond Burger or an Impossible.
That's it. And I do think that sometimes, and this is something that I find really interesting also, and it's something that I wanted to share with you and hear your opinion. Like, I follow a great teacher. His name is Stuart Kilchrist. And there's another great podcast that everybody should listen to. It's called The Yoga is Vegan. My dear friend Holly runs that from America. She also interviewed me once. It's a great podcast. And she had Stuart in an episode, and he was mentioning that Stuart is a yoga teacher as well. He also is Jivamukti trained, but he has his own studio and his own teacher trainings and stuff. So he does his own thing. Now, he's an amazing teacher, like really everybody. I will put him in the notes because he's incredible. But what he was mentioning is that he finds a lot of times also in these vegan magazines that there's too much emphasis always on the food, like it's always about food, and as if, and then he's like, what about the billions of animals that are slaughtered every day? Like maybe it would also be good to think about that, like I think, and I do think that there can be too much talk a lot about the food, and we are forgetting why we're doing this, how do you feel about this? Because I was really inspired by what he said.
Yeah, I think one of the points on that straight away when Beyond came to South Africa, one of the first things that I noticed about the product was how much packaging it came with. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, we're doing a great thing by being a vegan restaurant, plant-based restaurant here in Cape Town, but I'm contributing to a whole nother aspect of pollution just with this packaging, right? Mm-hmm. So I spoke to the guys that bring it into South Africa about it, and since then, obviously a lot of people had spoken to them around the world about it because it changed.
Yeah, and the amazing.
Cut down a lot more. So I think the conversations that we have about the initial point is always going to be food, right? Because people can connect with that more. But then the conversation starts to lead to the animals. Mm-hmm. And that becomes, for some people, it's uncomfortable and they leave the conversation. But for 90% of the people now that I've dealt with, they're happy to have that conversation, whereas before they weren't. Mm-hmm. So I do definitely see the food and the visualness of food being the good entry point now to have these more intense conversations, because before maybe it was Faces of the Anonymous with the computer screen in the middle of a square, a busy square, showing people what was happening to the animals. I think we're quite lucky now that we can do it in a is kind the way, or just a simpler version and a simpler conversation through the food. While someone's having a burger, you can actually have this conversation, because a lot of the times the thought process is sparked while they're eating the food. So what do you think about that? What do you think about so many animals dying? And the funny thing is, the amount of times I've had this conversation with someone about what is my feeling on, is an avocado vegan? My goodness. Do we really have to have that conversation?
But it's even we always have to, and this is also another funny joke that Stuart makes in his podcast about so what do you eat? And then he starts listing everything. Like, oh, I eat quinoa, I eat this, I eat the whole list, well, you were asking, because it's does anybody else does that? You know what I mean? It's so weird that you nearly have to kind of come to, it's like you're coming to court, like, okay, please explain why you do what you do, when, it's unnecessary, it's.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy the fact now that we have this platform where the food has become so much tastier and more accessible for people to eat very quickly, or just to come to find a vegan dish, quite a tasty vegan dish quite quickly. Mm-hmm. They don't have to go to too much effort to find a vegan dish anymore that's tasty. And then that sparks this conversation that we're having right now about the animals. Mm-hmm. That's when you pull out your list and you go, well, did you know
it takes
facts? Thousands of liters to slaughter that cow?
Yeah.
Did you know it takes this much for a honeybee to actually produce a tablespoon of honey that you so easily just spread on your toast? And people are more receptive to that because then they can actually equate what they're eating to that conversation. They go, oh, I'm just tucking into a quarter-pounder beef burger here, and it took so much water to make that. Especially in the last 2 years here in Cape Town, that's become more viable because we were on that list. We were almost there for the first major metropolis to run out of water. We were that close.
Yeah.
So it became an easier conversation to have because people are starting to see that Mother Nature's in trouble.
Yeah.
Planet's in trouble. Then this COVID